Honourable Speaker, sir, I rise to respond to His Excellency's most gracious address at the opening of this 2025 session of Parliament. This was His Excellency's maiden speech as Head of State. It was delivered with dignity, wisdom, and a unifying spirit. He spoke as the Commander-in-Chief of the Republic of Military Forces, upholding its role as a pillar of national unity. He spoke as a High Chief, being the head of the Tavato Confederacy and a direct descendant of one of the signatories to the deed of cession on 10th October 1874. His words reflected not only deep historical significance, but also a vision for the future, one that transcends politics and calls us to a higher purpose. His Excellency's service to the nation is a testament of duty and conviction. He has been a public officer, a politician, a Speaker of Parliament, yet beyond those roles, he stands among those who are called by destiny to serve. His journey is a reminiscent of leaders like the late Nelson Mandela, men who endured hardship, rose above adversity, and emerged with a renewed commitment to their people and their nation. His Excellency reminded his August House of this important Itoke idiom, sa indoko na karikari, a phrase deeply understood by our ancestors, the great voyagers of the Pacific. It is now familiar with those with an intimate knowledge of the ocean. Translated, it aligns well with the saying, I quote, a rising tide lifts all boats, unquote. This wisdom in particular relevant to leadership. The challenges we face today affect us all, whether we acknowledge them or not, but we cannot afford to be paralyzed by fear, like Mafatu, who feared the sea due to a childhood tragedy. Instead, we must adapt, innovate, and take decisive decisions and actions. His Excellency also invoked two Itoke metaphors, highlighting two essential tools: the indoko, used to cultivate land before planting dalo, and the karikari, an integral part of the nrua, the traditional Fijian canoe that connects the mast to the main boom and secures the sail. Though they serve different purposes, both are essential to their own right. If the indoko breaks, we do not abandon the task of planting. We find another tool. Perhaps even the karikari can get the job done. This metaphor speaks to the resilience we must embrace. The rising tide of challenges, economic, social, and environment, threatens our communities. We cannot solely rely on external assistance. We must find ways to endure and adapt. Likewise, as leaders, we must be willing to change our strategies, the methodologies to keep our nation afloat. His Excellency reminded us of the fundamental truth: the change we seek must start with us. Mr. Speaker, sir, I am fully aware of the critical cross-government efforts required to ensure our development trajectory is not stunned by the impacts of climate change and the threats to our environment, particularly our rich biodiversity. Today, the impacts of climate change are evident across society, imposing additional burdens and creating new and emerging threats, from farmers facing reduced crop yields to communities experiencing more frequent flooding, from coastal erosion to accelerated infrastructure deterioration due to climate extremes. The challenge before us is insidious and growing, but as His Excellency reminded us, we must rise to meet these challenges. In this context, the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change has a mandate to support the broader efforts of government to deliver and protect the delivery of our National Development Plan. Our work is to ensure external finance to address the incremental costs borne by impacts of climate change and associated environment degradation, increase data and monitoring, and coordinate cross-government action is in service of existing national priorities and ministerial mandates, whether it be in relation to health, education, social welfare, or private sector development. In 2025, the Ministry is tasked to increase those services, support policy coherence, and the need to deliver development outcomes that are robust, future-proof, and are fit for purpose. Mr. Speaker, sir, Fiji bears the unjust burden of global inaction on climate change, despite contributing to a mere 0.006% to total global emissions. We stand on the front lines, facing escalating climate threats, rising sea, intensifying cyclones, and economic shocks that jeopardize our people's future. While large economies delay decisive decisions, we in Fiji are already paying the price. Our commitment remains unwavering. We will continue to lead in adaptation and resilient building, to protect our communities, our economy, our way of life. But adaptation alone is not enough. The fight against climate change demands global responsibility. Our emission reduction targets grant us conditional access to climate finance, yet accessing these funds remains a challenge. His Excellency has rightly called upon us to pursue concessional and grant-based financing, the kind of support that developing nations like ours rightfully deserve, not as charity, but as climate justice. We must secure investment that drive emissions reduction while delivering multiple core benefits, fostering sustainable development and safeguarding our nation. The Ministry of Environment and Climate Change will continue advocating for improved access to resources that will propel Fiji towards its net zero transition by 2050, as set out in our national determined contributions. But let us be clear, we cannot do this alone. The international community must step up, uphold its commitment, and ensure that small island developing states like Fiji are not left to battle this crisis alone. This year, we are required to update our international climate change commitments made under the Paris Agreement, and will soon commence work to develop our third nationally determined contribution. The revised NDCs will not only reflect our commitment, but also our expectations in terms of financing. We need to adapt and mitigate the impacts of climate change across all sectors. On matters related to adaptation, Mr. Speaker, sir, I wish to reaffirm our government's unwavering commitment to building climate resilience and ensuring the protection of our communities in the face of the worsening climate crisis. One of our most pressing priorities is the relocation of our vulnerable, at-risk communities. The Nambabatu relocation project stands as a significant milestone in our efforts being the first community relocation project to be funded through the Climate Relocation of Communities (CIROC) Trust Fund, and the first to implement a robust climate policy such as a standard operating procedures of planned relocation. Mr. Speaker, sir, many continue to ask about the Climate Change Act 2021, which was a significant step forward in the maturity of Fiji's national framework for addressing climate change in the commencement of the Act. I am pleased to announce that we will soon be in a position to announce entry into force of over 60% of the Climate Change Act. This legislation will support the coordination, commitment to collaboration called by His Excellency, and through the operationalization of its provisions, further contribute to the realization of Fiji's contribution to the ocean of peace. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Ministry will continue to intensify our efforts to ensure more significant allocations of climate finance to support adaptation and resilience building efforts. Just last week, 2 of our regional Green Climate Fund projects were approved by GCF Investment Board. This is a historic achievement for the coalition government, as one of these projects was developed in a record time of 18 months. It is our vision to equip Fijians with the resources and tools necessary to face climate crisis through innovation, the leveraging of social coherence, and approaches that protect cultural, traditional value as well as economic assets. Mr. Speaker, sir, Fiji also secured $27.5 million in flexible financing for climate principle projects under the Neowater partnership with the New Zealand government, as well as an additional $31 million Fijian dollars in direct support from the European Union to support the implementation of the Climate Change Act 2021. My team and I will continue to advocate for simplified and improved access to climate finance across negotiations and parallelly focus on strengthening national capacities. On matters related to ocean, Mr. Speaker, sir, Fiji remains a global leader in ocean climate action. We are honored to be appointed as co-chair of the UNFCCC Ocean and Climate Change Dialogue, a role that ensures the voices of Pacific Island nations are heard and amplified on the international stage. In this regard, we extend our appreciation to the Honourable Leader of the Opposition for his steadfast leadership during COP meetings, where he has consistently championed the recognition of oceans as an official agenda item. We look forward to his continued guidance as we work towards to advance this shared vision. Fiji stands firm by its 30 commitment, which calls for preservation and protection of 30% of our ocean by 2030. We are convening a national dialogue this month to explore the most effective ways to move forward. We are currently developing Fiji's first blue economy framework to provide a clear roadmap for integrating economic growth with environmental sustainability in the marine sector. By developing a robust framework such as this, we are not only securing economic opportunities for Fijians, but also ensuring sustainable use of marine resources to support our future generation and our future articulating a key dimension of the vision that is imperative to create an ocean of peace. Mr. Speaker, sir, our Department of Environment oversees a similarly complex mandate to uphold principles of environmental sustainability. We are working diligently to revise our environmental laws and regulations. To improve the efficiency of our environmental impact assessment process, we have been working closely with the Reset Task Force, as well as the Ministry of Trade, and streamline to digitize our EIA process. A detailed review of the EIA process has been completed, with plans to launch a digital platform by October 2025 to the Building Permits Approval System Project, or BPAS. This would be the first amongst many other services we plan to digitize, which would significantly eliminate the bottleneck processes. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Department of Environment has also been actively increasing awareness and compliance through various enforcement training across all our environment regulations. For example, the department recently concluded all its committee meetings, including Natural Resource Owners Committee meeting mandated under the Environment Management Act. Further, multiple enforcement training sessions have been facilitated for border control officers on the protocol and procedure of enforcing compliance with the Convention on the International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora and the Endangered and Protected Species Act of 2002. Mr. Speaker, sir, Fiji is grappling with escalating littering challenges. To foster civic pride and to promote collective responsibility, the Ministry in January 2025 launched a Do the Right Thing campaign, encouraging every Fijian to take ownership of caring our surroundings. Under this campaign, the Ministry has held litter prevention officers LPO training for civil servants across the 4 divisions. LPOs are responsible not only to enforce litter through the Litter Act 2008, but issuing fixed penalty notices to individuals and businesses found in violation, but also advocate for the culture of environmental responsibility that we desperately need to address the litter crisis. The Ministry is also in the process of finalizing its 2 waste management-related policy documents. First, the Container Deposit Regulation, and the second, the National Integrated Waste Management Strategy. Mr. Speaker, sir, let me address some of the frequent asked questions by the public. My loyalty has been to my voters in the Vanua of Maduaka. If my chief and traditional leaders in the Vanua believe that a particular political path will serve them and Fiji better, I will listen to them. My allegiance is not to a particular party for the sake of politics, but to the will and well-being of the people. In 2021, as the only opposition MP from the Sodalpa who voted for the Turangambala Timodata as president of Fiji, I stood by my conviction, despite the disagreement from my party colleagues. At the time, I told them, and I quote, unquote, reference to the song, "Till the Lights of London Shine Again." This phrase holds deep meaning, as the chiefly household of the Turangana Timodata is known as Tauke Mbolatangan. Many did not understand the reasoning then, but time has revealed its significance. After the 2022 elections, His Excellency the Turangana Timodata as President carried out his duty with integrity, facilitating a peaceful transition of government in line with the will of the people. As the former head of state, his leadership in that moment reflected the true spirit of service and respect for democracy. As a loyal subject of Madhuata, I believe then, and still believe now, that if my Turangambala Timodata as president at that time joined in a government, it was my duty to respect it and support it. The leader of the opposition and my good friend Honorable Bala, a fellow veteran politician, have announced their plans to form a new political party. Many that supported the Fiji First Party in 2022 are now closely supporting and following the new brand of leadership. It's a new brand of leadership. To walk across the floor. They have had enough of the two-man rule of the last 16 years. Mr. Speaker, sir, as we turn the page to this new chapter, it is important to recognize the transition of leadership. We acknowledge the service of the former president, His Excellency the Turangambala Timodata, lead with dignity and skillfully navigating complex challenges during his tenure. Now, His Excellency the Turangambala Timodata assumes the solemn duty of uniting us, guiding us towards a meaningful collaboration and national priorities. This is our moment to embrace bipartisanship and the work towards critical national issues, the Ocean of Peace, Honorable Bala, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and the review of the 2018 Constitution. For instance, should the Constitution Amendment Bill be introduced for the first reading, we have the opportunity to walk across the floor. Before proceeding to second reading, we can invoke through our corridor talks in Parliament, Standing Orders 129, to establish a special parliamentary committee to conduct public consultation and report back to Parliament if the leader of the opposition is really genuine about talking about across the floor bipartisan this morning through the legislative framework that he talked about. If the Honorable Bala talked about unity and walking across the floor, this is the pathway, and I'm challenging them to take that path. This approach ensures national interest takes precedence over political division. The government also is open to genuine dialogue with the opposition at any venue comfortable to them. These are matters that transcend party lines and demand our collective commitment as leaders entrusted in Fiji's future. We can relate to this call of unity by His Excellency the Turangambala Timodata, reference to the powerful African proverb, and I quote, "If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together." Unquote. Mr. Speaker, sir, for 16 years, the Fiji First ship sailed fast. It sailed alone. That is why it ultimately ran aground. And when it did, its founding members abandoned the wreckage, leaving the crew in disarray. It was His Excellency the Speaker who threw us the life jackets, enabling us to reach ashore. Under the Fiji First two-man rule, there was no true bipartisanship. Opposition members were included in delegation but were never allowed to lead them. Power centralized in cross-party collaboration was deliberately avoided. In contrast, the coalition government values inclusivity. Last year, the leader of the opposition and the G9 leader joined the former president.
Honourable member, that is exactly where I had stopped the other two from going. Right? It is beyond the matters that I had said to be addressed with intervention. Please wrap up your statement.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. So I'm just wrapping up and into the last paragraph. What I was trying to infer, Honourable Speaker, sir, that this is the first time that the government, through the coalition government, has walked across the floor where opposition members have also part of Fiji's delegation to the UNGA and also COP29 and also most recently parliamentary delegation that has been led by the Honourable Rina Sharma to Brussels on the third Global Council of Political Renewal Framework. This is a new standard where national interest takes precedence over political divisions. Let us not forget this lesson, because if we move together, we'll go far. This is an opportunity to create a new legacy that's built on unity, shared purpose, and commitment to national progress. Mr. Speaker, sir, I thank you for this opportunity and fully supporting the framing, intent, and direction of His Excellency's opening address, of Parliament's opening address. I fully support the Honorable Prime Minister's motion. May God bless Fiji. Nawali.